Good evening. It is 7:30 p.m. on Wednesday, May 8th, 2019, and I now call the 2019 Annual Town Meeting back to order. For those of you who are here for the special, you're lucky enough to hear my introductory speech again. Voters are wearing light blue ribbons. Please display those ribbons prominently so our counters and I can see them. Visitors are wearing red ribbons and must sit in the visitors section in the bleachers to my left unless sitting with a parent who is a voter. Visitors are welcomed guests of the meeting but must act as silent witnesses to the proceedings. No visitor may address the meeting without recognition by the moderator and approval of the voters, and visitors may not make any kind of demonstration during debate. Emergency exits are located at the back corners of the gymnasium to both my left and right, and in the cafeteria to both the left and right after you leave the gym. Restrooms are straight ahead once you leave the gym, and during the meeting, no one may stand in the entrances. Officials and article sponsors who are addressing the voters may use the podium in front of me. Voters speaking on an issue may use the microphone in the middle aisle at the front of the seating area. Please begin your remarks by stating your full name and street address for the record. There is a 5-minute limit for any appearance at the podium. If you ask a question, the clock will not stop during the response. You may return to the podium after other voters who wish to speak have had their turn. Please address all comments and questions to or through the moderator. Town meeting guidelines are printed at the end of the warrant for your reference. While in the hall, please remain seated at all times so I know who wishes to speak and so our counters can accurately tally standing counts. Please turn your cell phones off or on silent and do not make phone calls in the hall. I have one announcement from the Board of Selectmen. This Saturday in Tewksbury, the post office is doing their food drive. Leave non-perishable food items at your mailbox and your letter carrier will pick them up and deliver them to the Tewksbury Food Pantry to help needy families in Tewksbury. Mr. Scott Wilson, the Chairman of the Finance Committee, will make the first motion on every article unless the Finance Committee is deferring to another board. Tonight, we will act on the remainder of Section 2, Articles 24 through 29, Article 32, and Section 3, Articles 34 through 40. Article 24, Mr. Wilson.
The Finance Committee moves to recommend Article 24.
Is there any discussion on Article 24? Ma'am.
Hi, Judith Fader, 838 Chandler Street. I just have a question. Are there any restrictions regarding the type of homes to go up?
Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Right now, we don't have any idea of the type of home that would be built. What we do know is that it's zoned for no more than 2 houses on this lot because it's acre zoning. We'll do an RFP, and we will seek proposals and evaluate those proposals and award it to the best proposal that we receive based on what they actually want to do and what they propose for financing. But right now, we just don't have an idea of what type of homes we want to put on this lot.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
Mr. Moderator, through you to the Town Manager.
Sir, could you state your name and address for the record, please?
Richard Lavasser, 25 Anthony Road. Through you to the Town Manager. Given the affordable housing that we talked about the other night, how close are we to the 10% threshold?
Right now, we're probably at about 9.6. When some units get built in the near future, we could be over that. But when the new census comes out in 2020, we will drop below the 10%. So it's going to fluctuate over the next few years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Let me knock everything over.
Sir.
John Bennett, 263 Pleasant Street. I'm an abutter to this piece of property, and I personally do not care whether they build houses, condos, or anything on the property. It's a mess. It needs to be cleaned up. But in that regard, who is going to be ultimate responsible to clean it up if it gets sold?
Mr. Montori.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The plan would be that in the request for proposals, we will put the burden on the person purchasing the lot to clean it up to our standards, and we will be very specific within the RFP outlining what needs to be done. There is a fair amount of broken glass and some structures on the property. There are underground tanks that need to be removed, so we'll be very specific and hold a high standard to the person who gets the RFP to clean it up.
And what about the property? I own a budding property that has their trash on it, quite a bit of it. Are you going to clean that up too?
We can add that to the RFP. I wasn't aware of that, and you should probably get in contact with myself, and we can make sure that's included.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on Article 24? Seeing none. Article 24 is a transfer of town property. It requires a 2/3 vote. I will take this vote in reverse. All those opposed to Article 24, please signify by rising. I see 0 voters rising. All those in favor of Article 24, please signify by rising. Article 24 is approved unanimously, adopted unanimously. Article 25, Mr. Wilson.
The Finance Committee would like to make a motion to adopt Article 25.
Is there any discussion on Article 25? Yes. Ma'am.
Judith Vader, 838 Chandler Street. I would like to propose an amendment to this. Might seem silly, but the stated purpose of it is to simply eliminate the mailing, requirement. So I think that we only need to change what affects mailing. That would be removing 6 words. 5 from line 2, the words written by having said notice, and the word mailed in line 3. And that would accomplish the purpose without allowing any unintended consequences. I think that I don't think votes should be taken if there isn't a quorum, and I don't think that Finance Committee meetings should be, I think they should be duly called, and they should be held in a place where minutes can be taken and people can observe. Thank you.
Could I have your amendment in writing, please?
Yes, would you like me to read it the way it would be without it?
I'll read it. If
Okay.
you submit it, I'll read it. So the proposed amendment leaves the section of the bylaw in the bylaw, does not delete it completely, and deletes only the following 6 words. On the second line, the word written between given and notice, so it would just read given notice. The last 4 words, by having said notice. The first word on the next line, mailed. And I believe that's it. So that is the most. So the amendment would be to remove the word written from the second line and the phrase by having said notice mailed from the end of line 2 and the beginning of line 3. Otherwise, and the law would stay in the bylaws. Give us a moment. We will act on the amendment first. We will debate the amendment first and vote on the amendment first before we continue debate on the article itself. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The reason for this article was because it's outdated in the notification to Finance Committee members. This has nothing to do with notification to the general public. State statute through the open meeting law governs notification of meetings when they're published, where they're published, taking of minutes, posting of minutes on our website. This was solely notification to Finance Committee members themselves. So we just wanted to clean up an outdated requirement and just follow the open meeting law like every other committee in the community. So I'd ask that you vote against the amendment and that we move forward with the article as written for adoption.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the amendment only? Okay.
Patricia Muse, 551 South Street. I do have a question about quorum. So is that also included in the open meeting law? Okay.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment?
Yes, I'm concerned about the quorum issue here.
Well, that would be outside the amendment. So we'll discuss that when we're debating the article itself. The amendment doesn't impact anything having to do with a quorum.
So if we voted for the amendment, it would leave in striking the notice for a quorum.
I understand what you're saying. You know what? You're right. Well, the amendment, because the amendment puts the bylaw back, the amendment actually affects the entire. That would be back in. Yes. So if you have a question about the quorum, just to not confuse anybody any more than I already have, I'll let you
Okay,
can
my
ask it now.
understanding for the amendment was to leave that section intact with the exception of the written notice and the mailing,
That's correct.
leaving the requirement for a quorum.
That's correct.
Okay. So I stand here in support of that amendment due to the fact that we would like to make sure we have a quorum when the Finance Committee does meet.
Thank you.
So I just want to clarify
Wilson.
on that point. We cannot take action on any item without quorum, period. It's in open meeting laws. This bylaw doesn't affect that. Open meeting law supersedes it. Open meeting law says that any action that we take, if we do not have a quorum, we cannot take an action, period. So this does not affect that.
Ma'am.
Following up on that, Judith Fader, 838 Chandler Street. State laws can change. That's all I have to say. So I would like to keep the bylaw in the time, keep this section in the bylaws and just delete the part about mailing. I mean, in this day and age, yeah, you could text, you could email, you could whatever. You don't have to mail. But that's all that needs to go to accomplish the stated purpose. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
Bob McKenna, 29 Oregon Road. I need you to re-explain this a little bit. I don't think I'm the only one out here confused about what we just discussed. It seemed to be a little convoluted. Can we just clarify it a little, please?
Could I have Mr. Wilson, could you give us the sort of the background for the article, please?
Well, we're talking about the amendment right now, so I think,
Yeah.
I think just to clarify the amendment so that we're actually voting on the right thing for the amendment. If the amendment passes, everything that has a line through it will remain with the exception of the word written on the second line and the words by having said notice mailed, which goes from the second line into the third line. I think that's really all that's sort of relevant to the amendment.
Yes.
Vote.
May I ask a question? Does the original article Is the original article in place somewhat because the open meeting law makes this bylaw obsolete? Because the requirements of the open meeting law supersede the town bylaw and thus cover what is basically covered in this bylaw.
Yes, that is an accurate statement. When these general bylaws were written, obviously open meeting law didn't exist, and that wasn't something that governed us. Now we're governed by the open meeting laws. Any elected board, committee, they all need to follow all those same rules. So quorum is a must regardless of what this says here. We have to have a quorum.
Ruth Chu,
Thank you.
Ruth Chu, 338 North Billerica Road. I agree with the previous speaker at this microphone that laws do change, and it doesn't hurt for us to maintain our control over our local government, and therefore I would like to see the quorum statement remain, and therefore I support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to vote on the amendment. The amendment to Article 25 would leave Section 220090 in the town bylaws and would simply replace the word written on line 2, would delete the word written on line 2 and delete the phrase by having said notice mailed. Otherwise, the bylaw would remain intact. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed to the amendment, please signify by saying no. No. The amendment fails. On the article, all those in favor of Article 25 as written in the warrant.
Mr. Moderator?
I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. Do we have a chance to debate now that the amendment is...
Oh, you know what? You're absolutely right. I'm sorry. Further discussion on the article. Wow. Second day.
Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you. Dustin Weir, 426 Chandler Street. I noticed that I see that the Finance Committee's recommendation is to adopt that. I'm just wondering what the vote count was on that particular item.
Our vote was unanimous, 7-0.
Is there any further discussion on Article 25? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 25, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, signify by saying no. No. Article 25 is adopted. Article 26. Ma'am, yes? Can you come to the microphone, ma'am?
I think the vote on the amendment was awfully close, and I think this is even closer. I think there should be a count.
If we have 7 voters that stand and request a count, we will have a standing count. I see 7 voters standing. You may all sit. Thank you. We're not voting. We're just authorizing the standing count. So
But maybe
we will
authorize
have a
the
standing count.
But maybe have it on the amendment first?
No, we will not have it on the amendment.
Okay.
Unless 7 voted, well, that's passed. That request would have had to happen before the vote on the article. So on the article itself, I'm sorry? What do we second? No, the vote on the amendment was clear, and that...
I'd like to make a
once
motion
we
for
have moved-
reconsideration.
Excuse me.
On the amendment, please.
Once a decision is made on a vote, a request for a standing count has to happen before any other action is taken at the meeting. Another vote was taken, so the time to request the standing count on the amendment has passed.
Is it possible to ask for a motion to reconsider?
No, we do not allow a motion to reconsider in Tewksbury.
Thank you.
Thank you. On the article, all those in favor of the article, please signify by, please stand. Counters, please count. Voters. We have voters to the right. All those opposed to Article 25, please signify by rising. Counters, please count. On the article, yes, 184, no, 57. Article 25 is adopted. Article 26, Mr. Wilson.
On Article 26, the Finance Committee voted unanimously to make a motion to adopt Article 26.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Is there any discussion on Article 26? Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just briefly, the intent of this article is to allow us to put a summary in the warrant when we have articles that exceed 3 pages. And the best example right now is in the fall, the plan is to come forward with changes to the zoning bylaw, and it will be a complete rewrite of the zoning bylaw. That probably will be close to 200 pages. To put the 200 pages into the warrant article that is mailed will be very costly to the community. So what this article proposes is that anything over 3 pages will be summarized in the warrant that is mailed only. The warrant that is posted in accordance with state statute will have the full article. The warrant that is posted on the website for people to download and review will have the full article. It will not have the summary. The 300 copies that we will have available at Town Hall and at other town buildings will have the full article. What we're talking about in this article is a summary for the mailing, the warrants that are mailed only. Thank you.
Thank you. He answered my questions. Is there any further discussion? Sir.
Ray Lasecki, 111 John Street. I would just ask that if we exceed the 300 copies,
Could I have
that
you
we would
speak
print
more
more.
directly in the microphone, sir? I'm sorry.
Would they print more if we run out of the 300 copies?
Mr. Montori.
Absolutely, and we'll have copies available at town meeting.
Ma'am.
Ruth Chu, 338 North Bell River Road. My concern going forward here is that in the warrant, we generally do have some articles that do exceed 3 pages. And if this is just a one-time issue, then the warrant article should reflect that it is a one-time issue. And I don't see that here. Is that correct? There's no reference to it being a one-time issue.
Mr. Montori.
That is correct. It doesn't reference a one-time issue. This would be going forward, and there is flexibility within the article that if we have a warrant article that is 4 pages and the warrant is not a long warrant, we could put the full text in there. But it just leaves discretion to us when there's a large warrant article such as the bylaw to not have to put the whole article in there and mail it.
I don't understand why you're not making an exception for just this one time.
We just felt it'd be difficult to make an exception in a bylaw. It's changing the bylaw for good because there could be other instances. I can't predict what type of other bylaws, whether they're zoning or general, could come forward.
And it has to be a bylaw? We can't just do an exception at town meeting?
That's the way we wrote the article, and our intent was to have it go forward the way it is completely, for the rest of the tenure of that bylaw.
My question basically was, is it possible to do this without making it a bylaw?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Jonathan Ricker, 220 Cart Path Road. I echo the same concerns as the previous speaker. I do feel that this is appropriate for the full town bylaw mailing, but the bylaw will be changed forever, and then we're going to have to live with those consequences as we move forward throughout the years in our town. And I just think that the verbiage is flawed. The intent is there, but I don't think we need to change the bylaw forever just for this one-time deal. Thank you.
Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I guess I respectfully disagree. I don't see this as a consequence. Just to give you an idea, the warrant that was mailed out for this town meeting cost approximately $6,200. The warrant, if we had to pull with the full text of the bylaw in the fall, would be 4 times that. So that would be about $24,000 to $30,000 to mail out the warrant in the fall. We feel that's unnecessary if we mail the summary but have the full text of the article available in the 300 copies and on the website.
Mr. Donnelly.
Kevin Donnelly, 8 Westland Drive. Article 4, the budget is 8 pages. You going to summarize that?
That would not apply because the article only applies to general or zoning bylaw changes.
Just the zoning
warrant
bylaws.
articles associated with those.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
Excuse me, Bob McKenna, Oregon Road, number 29. I guess I agree with the concerns of 2 and 3 speakers ago. I'm not comfortable with this being a permanent change I think it should have been a one-time only. And do we have the option of making an amendment on this tonight to make it for one time only?
I would have to ask town council. I don't really believe you can make a town bylaw specific to a one-time event. I would not be recommending that you do a town bylaw for one event. Yeah, town council would not recommend that. I do have one question to the Board of Selectmen. In the the third line of the bold-faced part, the actual change to the article, the second to last word is shall. If you change the word shall to may, you would make the bylaw be at the discretion, you would make that change be at the discretion of the Board of Selectmen rather than a hard and fast rule anytime it was greater than 3 pages. Just wondering if that may be something you'd be interested in doing.
That's fine if it would satisfy at the end of the... At the end of the day, are we talking about the number of pages? So right now, we specified 3, and to be completely honest, that was a guesstimate, total guesstimate. The idea here is if we're changing the bylaws, which we are bringing them to town meeting, that could be 200, 300, 400 pages that we're mailing, and we're talking about cost. So we did guess at 3 pages. Would it satisfy to make an amendment to make it 5, 10, 15? The more we go up, the greater the cost. So I don't know if you want to consider that for a possible amendment.
I guess what I'm saying is I agree with the people 2 and 3 times ago, speakers ago, that the intent of this is good, but it doesn't seem to be written to, that it's a one-time only. And I guess that's my objection. Thank you.
Sir.
So this is just for a zoning bylaw, correct? There's not a proposed
general bylaw change or a zoning bylaw change.
So the issue that led to this amendment is a proposed zoning bylaw, not a general bylaw, correct?
I mean, I would think it's a general issue based on the size of some of the articles in a warrant, but.
All right. So I have a motion for an amendment. So to change the word shall to may, to strike the word 3 and replace it with the word 10, and to strike the word general and replace it, or just strike the word general and or. Seems like we have a overly broad proposal here for the issue at hand.
Could I have that amendment in writing, please?
Sure.
While you're doing that, sir, I'm going to let the next speaker speak. Ma'am.
Ruth Chu, 338 North Blicker Road. I would like to make a motion for indefinite postponement.
Before, Mr. Wilson, we have an amendment that we need to address first. So I'm going to hold off on you until I get this. The amendment that we're considering at this moment is to remove the words general or, so that it would only refer to an article for zoning. On the next line, to change 3 pages to 10, And on that same line, to change the second to last word, shall, to may. Is there any discussion on the amendment? The amendment only. Mr. Panelitis.
I just stand, Bruce Panelitis, Foster Road. I just stand against the amendment. The whole point of the article was to reduce the costs. So if we're going to allow 10-page articles for that full rewrite, we're talking still about a very, very large mailing, and we're wasting another $20,000 or $30,000. Frankly, we shouldn't be mailing them at all. They're available at the library, they're available at Town Hall, and you can download them. And then I have a question on the, when we get to the real question, I'll stay up here, but we should defeat this amendment immediately.
On the
Mrs. Hold on a minute. Mrs. Carey, are you speaking on the amendment or on the article? The article? Okay, ma'am. Or, sir, are you speaking on the amendment or the article? Amendment. I'll have you speak next, please.
Hi, Brad Lafata of 1215 Downey Martell Way. Since I feel like this is going to be a contentious issue.
Can I have you speak more directly into the microphone,
is this better?
sir?
Since this is going to be a contentious issue, I feel like I guess, can I move so that this vote will be a standing vote as opposed to a voice vote?
A standing vote?
Yes.
Yes, we can vote on that. If you like, we would do that immediately. This is on the amendment.
Yes. Yeah.
Before you speak, this is like a crash course in moderation. A motion, I'm sorry? Oh, sir, could we have your name, please? Your name and address? We missed it when you... And while you're doing that, I'll explain. A motion to change the order or to change the method of voting, which I'm going to look right now and make sure I'm right, is the former moderator is sitting over there making sure I do this correctly. Okay. We will deal with the motion after we finish discussion, but before we do the vote.
On the amendment.
On the amendment, ma'am. Yes.
I would just like to point out that majority of the articles currently are below 10 pages, and for future reference, I think that that is very conservative to allow 10 pages. We are speaking about the need for this new zoning bylaw being in excess of 200 pages, and that is where the problem is. So the mailing issue is no different than it was for this warrant article. The exception here is that we are voting for 10 pages as a maximum going forward, which is really not typical of any warrant article that I've ever seen since I've lived here over 30 years. So I think that the 10 pages is reasonable to add here. It won't add any excessive spending. So I'm in support of the article as the amendment to the article as written.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Since I will assume that I would get 7 voters to ask for a standing count after a voice vote, I will just decide that we will take a standing count on the amendment rather than making you vote on it. All those in favor of the amendment, and I can reread it if you like, if anybody has any questions about it, it simply eliminates the words general or before zoning, changes the number of pages from 3 to 10, and changes the second to last word in the third line of the change from shall to may. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by rising. Counters, please count. All those opposed to the amendment, please signify by rising. Counters, please count. On the amendment, yes 37, no 228. The amendment fails. We have a motion. Before we go that, further discussion on the article itself. Mrs. Carey, well, she cut in line, but we'll let her.
I didn't
Keith,
Mr.
before
Wilson.
we have a discussion, is there still a motion on the floor for indefinite postponement?
There is a motion for indefinite postponement,
So
yes.
I'll move the question on that, if I
Okay.
can.
So after the three voters that are standing
Yeah,
speak,
we want to talk on the... Okay.
Mrs. Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. There's nothing that precludes us from bringing this back to the 2020 annual town meeting to restore it to its original state. And that is my suggestion to the town manager and the Board of Selectmen to do that, because I think the original town bylaw for posting the warrants or mailing the warrants worked out very well. And I would like them to put that in their file folder and return this to the 2020 annual town meeting without the bylaw, the town bylaw or the zoning bylaw information. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
Thomas Rabina, 940 Main Street. While I love saving money, I'd like to remind the town that we have spent about $104 million in articles to this point. And if the town would like to change zoning bylaws or general bylaws or anything that's going to require 200 pages, despite the fact that it's going to cost us a lot of money to send it to each house in this town, we should be receiving it, because that is a drastic change to the bylaws of this town, and we should be informed. And how many of you have these from that you got in the mail with you right now discussing at this meeting? Again, it's an expense, but we should vote against this. Thank you.
Sir? You're just moving the question?
To talk on the article.
You do? Mr. Wilson?
I just wanted to say that I support this article. I think that, Scott Wilson, 145 Jenny's Way, Tewksbury. It's not just about saving money. Anytime we have any article that comes in front of us that has 3 or 4 or 5 or 50 or 100 pages, I just think it's too much to mail out when in today's day and age, we can get it off the internet, we can get it off the town website, we can pick it up at the library or the senior center or down at town hall. There are so many ways that this can easily be picked up, as opposed to mailing it to 6,000 households when, you know, we're sitting in a meeting with 250 people. So while I agree with the voter who spoke just before me, that it is important that the voters come to this meeting informed with all the information, I don't think it's necessary that people get a mailed copy to their home to make this decision. That's it.
Ruth Chu, 338.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, I have a motion to move the question that I have to take a vote on that. Thank you. We have a motion to move the question. Moving the question is a decision to end debate on the article. If you wish to end debate on the article, vote yes on moving the question. If you wish to continue debate, vote no. All those in favor of moving the question, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. We will move the question. We have a motion for indefinite postponement of Article 26. This motion is acted upon before a motion to adopt. Indefinite postponement is a negative action. Its intent is to defeat the article, requires a majority vote to prevail. If you wish to defeat the article, vote in favor of indefinite postponement. If you wish to vote on the adoption of the article, vote in opposition to indefinite postponement. All those in favor of indefinite postponement of Article 26, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed to indefinite postponement of Article 26, please signify by saying no. No. Indefinite postponement does not prevail. We have a motion for adoption of Article 26. All those in favor of Article 26, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed to Article 26, please signify by saying no. No. Article 26 is adopted. Article 27, Mr. Wilson.
The Finance Committee makes a motion unanimously to adopt Article 27.
Thank you. Mr. Kukoc.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Richard Kukoc, 73 Emerald Court. I rise in favor of adoption of Article 27.
Thank you. Ma'am.
Linda Madden, 225 Salem Road, Tewksbury. I was here at the last meeting and we discussed the building of the many homes on Winterberry Lane, and that's the road that they're looking to make a town road. At the last meeting, my concern was that my road, or my private little way, was getting flooded. We have 4 homes on our road, and so it did not get passed at the last meeting. We've had several meetings, many emails, and we've had a promise from the town to put in some drainage. It has not happened yet, and I'm just looking for confirmation in front of the entire town that this will in fact happen within a timely manner.
Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. We have been speaking with the Maddens for quite some time. I understand there's going to be a meeting on site at the next day it rains, which we believe it's Friday, with your husband. And the town has committed to trying to resolve the issue, and we intend to do that. The developer has finished his work. The work was in compliance with all of the town requirements. The plans met all the standards of the town, and we don't believe the residents of Winterberry should be penalized. But saying that, we still will work with you and the other residents on your street, which is not an accepted street, but we will work with you to solve that drainage problem. We're committed to doing that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on Article 27? Seeing none. All those in favor of Article 27, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. Article 27 is adopted. Article 28. Mr. Wilson.
On Article 28, the Finance Committee unanimously makes a motion to indefinitely postpone Article 28.
So that is a motion. Yes, thank you. Mr. Dunn?
Joe Dunn, 100 April's Way, Tewksbury. Good evening. I make a motion to adopt Article 28, which, if passed, will allow businesses and their customers in town a choice of plastic bag type at the checkout counter, but would not force anyone to change anything that has been done since April the 1st. Simply put, businesses could choose to provide their customers the bag offerings that have been available since April 1st. Businesses could provide their customers bags available prior to the ban taking effect April 1st, or businesses could offer their customers a choice. The only thing Article 28 does is remove the force of town government from the decision. We all value the freedom of choice in the items we buy, the businesses we patronize, charities and organizations that we support, and groups that we belong to. I ask that you consider your ability to make the best choice for you and your family, and ask yourself why the town needs to be a part of that choice. If your concern is the environment, how does banning one type of bag and replacing it with another that could easily be an environmental concern change anything? I believe it does not. If your concern is recycling costs, what happens when those pizza boxes or styrofoam cups wind up in the recycling stream? Do we ban those too? A better solution is education of our residents as to what items are problematic in the recycling stream so that they can solve this problem going forward. No ban is necessary. Important to consider, where do bans end? What is the next thing that some will deem unacceptable in our everyday lives that they will seek to ban? Your choice of cup, food container, or straw, the size of your home, the vehicle you choose to drive, your kids being able to play youth football. These conversations are already taking place across our country, and you can be guaranteed that those who wish to impose their views of what is and is not acceptable upon the rest of us will be coming after more. The debate will not end with plastic bags. The people of our town should be allowed to use their own judgment. That's freedom. Bans are government force when people cannot be compelled any other way because it's easier to force rather than debate and win people over. In anticipation of the other side's rebuttal, they always say, it's just going to take some getting used to. This is the United States of America. I don't think we should ever get used to the idea of government telling us how we can and can't live our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am.
Alexandra Lauder, 1001 Whipple Road. I'm here to speak strongly against the adoption of Article 28 of the warrant, which would reverse the ban of single-use plastic bags. My concerns for this issue are twofold, both anecdotal and practical. Since moving to Tewksbury, I have participated in various town cleanup events organized by the Beautification Committee. For 3, 4, even 5 hours at a time, I have raked, pulled weeds, and picked up trash. The high volume of empty nip bottles aside, one of the most common pieces of trash I pick up was in fact single-use plastic bags. These bags get buried under leaves, stuck in trees, and are often filled with other trash and left on the side of the road. I know this because I live on Whipple Road. They're usually in my yard. These bags can take up to 1,000 years to decompose. During that 1,000 years, the single-use plastic bag can disrupt ecosystems and harm wildlife. If the thought of sea creatures eventually suffocating on the plastic bags doesn't pull at your heartstrings enough, then allow me to hit you where it really hurts, your wallet. Each time we gather for town meeting, we vote on the appropriation of use of millions of taxpayer dollars. Understandably so, there is a reason for debate and for the financial impact each article is discussed often at length. This article is no different. When single-use plastic bags are not littered in our streets, yards, and rain gardens, they're somewhere else they also shouldn't be, in our recycling bins. Last summer and fall, I participated in the town recycling audits as an inspector. During my assignment, I found that a lot of residents were mistakenly putting these plastic bags into their recycling bins for collection. Part of that program was to educate residents that single-use plastic bags can only be recycled when returned to the retailer. When these bags are put into our single-stream recycling system, that's where the problem gets expensive. As discussed by a representative from Mass DEP during the educational seminar held at Tewksbury Library on May 1st, these plastic bags halt the operations of our regional recycling centers on a daily basis. Every single day in Massachusetts, this machinery that sorts our recyclables is stopped for several hours and manually untangled, stopping production, wasting time and money. Tewksbury is not an exception. When recycling facilities have to stop operations and slow their productivity to remove single-use plastic bags and other tanglers from its machines from Tewksbury's recycling stream, the cost goes right back to the town and right back to its taxpayers. If you want to talk about bringing in more industry, selling parcels, and applying more state funds in order to alleviate the per-household tax burden, those are all great and big ideas. But we have an opportunity to start smaller here in a way that is not only positively impacting the wallet, but also the environment. Thank you.
And before you speak, I'm going to ask the town manager to speak on it from the town's viewpoint. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and I apologize ahead of time if I repeat some of the comments that were previously made. First, I would ask town meeting to vote against this article, which would repeal the single-use plastic bag bylaw. We've had this bylaw in effect since April 1st, and we've had no issues. The implementation has been a seamless transition with no resistance or complaints from any of the retailers. Everyone has recognized the importance of this ban and has complied. There is no reason to repeal this bylaw, but there are many reasons to ensure it stays in place. The bylaw was brought forward and adopted because of environmental impact single-use plastic bags have. They contribute to litter, pollution of the land, our waterways and ocean. There is also a connection to air pollution, and they contribute to the death of marine animals. Another reason this bylaw was brought forward and adopted was because of the financial impact single-use plastic bags have to the town. They cause problems in our recycling collection by contaminating our recycling loads, causing a cost impact to the town. Single-use plastic bags have played such a major part in our contamination of the town's recycling that we were fined by the company who services the town curbside recycling program. Also, the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection intervened this past summer because our recycling contamination rate was so high that they funded a program for the town to educate the public and to hire inspectors to inspect residential recycling. And they found single-use plastic bags to be a major contributor to our contamination problem. In addition to contamination, single-use plastic bags impact the equipment at the materials recovery facility that process our recycling, causing the cost of processing recycling to increase, which is ultimately passed on to the town. Because of these environmental and financial impacts, Tewksbury joined what is now over 100 cities and towns, including the city of Boston, and passed a ban on single-use plastic bags. Now, because of these same impacts, the state is considering legislation to implement a statewide ban. The legislation is supported by large supermarkets and food stores. In closing, as you weigh your decision regarding this article, I hope you consider these issues I have raised. But more importantly, keep in mind your responsibility to be stewards of the environment in this town, in this state, and in this country. And we have to teach our children by our actions tonight to carry on that commitment. We can no longer ignore the environmental impacts that face us, and if this repeal is approved tonight, that is exactly what we will be doing. Yes, there is a financial impact in repealing this bylaw, but the repeal of this bylaw has much more of a far-reaching and long-term impact to the environment, and you will not be able to measure that in dollars. Voting against this repeal and allowing the existing bylaw to remain to remain in place is not about limiting anyone's right. Rather, and more importantly, maintaining this bylaw is about this legislative body undertaking its responsibility to make decisions you believe are in the best interest of this community now and in the future. Thank you, and I'd ask that you not support this article.
Thank you. Ma'am.
My name is Christy Andrews. I'm 53 Bay State Avenue, and I am the owner of a small business here in town, a retail business. And as a business owner, this has put a significant damper on our business because we've had to absorb significant costs to find alternative ways to provide bags for our clients. And the majority of businesses in this town are small businesses. There's a handful of large businesses, such as the supermarkets in town, that can easily absorb these costs, but the majority of small business cannot. That being said, I'd like to raise an amendment to the bylaw. The current bylaw states that all bags for checkouts must be thicker than 3 mils and be considered reusable or recyclable. I would like to propose that changes to the bags must be thicker than 3 mils or they must be stamped reusable or recyclable, displayed in a visible manner on the outside of the bag. This would allow small businesses and other businesses to continue using plastic bags that are already 100% recyclable, reusable.
This is difficult, only because it's going to be confusing. Because the text of the existing bylaw is not in the warrant, and the article is an amendment to the bylaw to delete this section, I'm not sure how to present the amendment to the voters in a way that's understandable to the voters, because they don't have the text of the article in front of them.
Well, I have it here, but it's not an amendment to delete this text. It's to change one word from and to or. Because currently it says plastic bags have to be 100% recyclable or reusable and also greater than 3 mils thick. I just want it to read 100% recyclable, reusable, or greater than 3 mils. And if there's no place that I've been able to find that makes 100% recyclable, reusable plastic bags that are also greater than 3 mils thick. I can find 100% recyclable, reusable bags like the ones we've always used, but they're not greater than 3 mils. Okay. I can find greater than 3 mil bags, but they're not 100% recyclable, reusable. And paper bags just kill millions of trees, and they don't work for our business because they're not flexible.
Okay. Could I have you submit your amendment, please?
Absolutely.
And we're going to hold discussion on the article until I can determine that the amendment is in order so that we can discuss the amendment. Reading glasses on.
Moderator, point of order?
Yes.
I would argue that this amendment is not in order, given that we're not discussing the text of the actual bylaw, that this was simply an attempt to delete that whole section. Therefore, this is out of order. That would be my opinion.
And that would be incorrect, because the article is an amendment to the town bylaw as a whole and deletes a section of the town bylaw, much like the Finance Committee's amendment earlier its purpose was to delete an entire section of the bylaw, but we looked at that article as an amendment to that section. So we discussed and voted on amendments to the existing section of the bylaw. And that's why I'm going to allow this, because amending the bylaw by deleting it is amending the bylaw is the scope of the article. The article, as written by the sponsor, the purpose of it is to delete the entire article. This amendment would replace the repeal by changing the word and to or. I just have to figure out a way that I can explain this to people, that the voters will understand what they're voting on, because they don't have the, it's a page-long bylaw, and even though the amendment only changes one word, I'm not sure that we can present this. Yeah, I'm gonna, once I read it, I'm going to discuss that with him.
He wants to delete this by amending it, changes the whole article, purpose of the article. He can't.
Yeah, it's out of order.
It's out of order.
I'm going to take a 5-minute recess just so I can discuss this with town council. Thank you. I can have everyone back to their seats, please. Going to come out of recess now. The resident is withdrawing her request to submit an amendment, and we will move forward now on the article itself. Sir.
Daniel Ronan, 1001 Whipple Road. I move to have a standing vote when we eventually finish with
that.
debate.
That's a given. I will be doing that. Yes.
Thank you.
Ma'am.
Sarah Marino, 12 Sullivan Parkway. I am against this amendment. I also participated in the town cleanup on Saturday, and I cleaned up an area right next to the Market Basket in Oakdale Plaza, and I got 2 big yellow bags filled with trash, and amongst all the debris I found about 24 plastic bags. So it really is a problem. There are some that have probably been there for over a year. They were really, had a lot of holes and really deteriorated. So I just want to say that I oppose this. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
Mark Minucci, 12 Chester Circle, and I've lived here for 11 years, and I worked at the Tewksbury Raytheon for 5 of those years, and I stand before you in opposition to the article. I was at the town meeting on Monday, and I heard a lot of passion from people who talk about the education of our children and want them to have beautiful schools to stand in, like this one, which was voted on by town meeting, and the new elementary school. And I think about that passion that people have for this town. I saw the commitment that people had during the town cleanup. And the idea that our children are going to be standing in beautiful new schools on a nice athletic field filled with plastic bags and garbage is really incongruous with what this town voted on Monday. I run every week in this town. For 11 years I've been running. Chandler Road, Whipple Road, Shawsheen, Foster. I run on these, and I think you see the town in a different light when you're a runner, when you're a cyclist, when you're a dog walker, when you're pushing your stroller with your child. You see the town not at some high conceptual level, you see it at ground level. And when you see Tewksbury at ground level, I see nips, I see beer cans, I see your bottles, syringes, and plastic bags. There are 2 things I've never encountered. I've never seen a reusable bag as litter, and I've never seen a brown paper bag as litter. And there's a reason for that, because people continue to use reusable bags, and paper bags biodegrade naturally. So when you see this town at ground level, you do not need plastic bags in your sight. It's really sickening. And I was really interested by the person who submitted this article. They said, the other side. I don't know what the other side is. There's a Tewksbury side in this room. I don't know who the other side is. It's this language of toxicity, the other side. And they'll say, well, you just have to get used to it. There's a lot of things in this country we have said you just got to get used to. Like the women's right to vote is something you just had to get used to. Get used to it. And I'm sorry if plastic bags are something that you love and you have no other handled options to carry your groceries in. You're just going to have to get used to it. Vote no.
Sir.
Sean Coughlin, 50 Hawthorne Circle. I stand opposing Article 28. I myself am a runner. I see it every day. I trip over them every day as I run. I know that in Boston they did away with this earlier. You can already see the big difference of how much cleaner it is just around the street. It's just an adjustment. Reusable bags for me are always in my car. They're always in my bag. I can use them anywhere and everywhere. I can wash them. If you can't afford a reusable bag, there's always paper bags available to you. I think we just need to make this adjustment. The same thing goes with styrofoam cups. Boston's about to do away with those as well and use a double paper wrapped cup that can be recyclable. We need to be a voice of change here, and our kids need to be able to recycle as well. So if we don't do it now, when do we do it?
Panelitis.
I move the question, please.
After Mr. Francis at the end of the line speaks, we will move the question. Ma'am.
My name is Juliet Kaplan, 150 Fox Run Drive. I stand to reject this article. I am the leader of a Girl Scout Daisy troop. These first graders just created a PSA video to educate Tewksbury residents about the plastic bag ban. They talked about the environmental impact with concern for the turtles and the other wildlife. They said that people can still get paper bags. They also encouraged people to bring their own bags and offered tips for developing this new habit, such as keeping them in the car, keeping the bags in the garage, and even having the children remember to bring the bags when they go shopping. On Monday, we just voted for a new elementary school for our children. Our children are encouraging us to reject the use of plastic bags. Please vote against this article. Thank you.
Ma'am?
Good evening. My name is Paige Impink, and I'm part of the Beautification Committee. I'd like to address a comment to the overreach of government. When the Beautification Committee brought this to October town meeting, that committee is made up of residents. They're volunteers who give their time, who care about this community, and who were willing to take action against a litter problem that they could no longer tolerate. The Beautification Committee has run town cleanup since 2013, and when we started pulling plastic bags out of Long Pond, we realized it was time to take even more action than our biannual cleanups. When the bylaw change was passed by majority vote, Tewksbury joined 81 cities and towns who had already adopted these measures. I'd just like to let you know that in the 48 hours since Monday's town meeting, Norwell, Hull, Sharon, Saugus, Woburn, Dover, Brewster, and Eastham have all passed a plastic bag restriction in their communities. I would also like to inform you that an attempt was made in Winchester to repeal their ban, and it was defeated. Can all of those communities be wrong in their desire for a clean community? A community that's made up of people who care about where their children grow up, where they run, where they work, where they play. The committee went door to door and spoke with restaurants and retailers. They were greeted warmly and enthusiastically. In fact, we were told by several, "What took you so long?" I also point, as others have, to the overwhelming participation of the town cleanup on Saturday. Over 200 people turned out to change the landscape in Tewksbury from littered to clean. I urge you to keep the momentum going, keep our community clean, and vote no on Article 28. Thank you.
Mr. Robertson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I rise in front of my fellow citizens to speak as, Dave Robertson, 41 David Morris Road, for those who might not know. As a member of the Environment, Natural Resources, and Agricultural Committee in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I wish to you, Mr. Moderator, to educate the residents on some movements on the state level. As you know, there is legislation moving this. We are following, and seemingly so, with a strong voice, to ban plastic bags in favor of the free market, moving towards a potato starch-based alternative. In fact, I'd say probably about a half-hour testimony alone was from a number of companies that responded to the incentive of the European Union when they themselves decided to elect through the entire continent to ban plastic bags. Along with California, which in and of itself is the world's 5th largest economy, which has banned it, created a massive incentive. And they're reportedly only a few months away from coming up with an alternative, compostable alternative. So the incentives there is for the market for those who are worried. Of course, the free market has elected to solve this. And for those who are still worried about costs, keep in mind currently our plastic bags are priced into the value of the goods that we purchase anyways as part of the overhead costs of business. The Associated Industries of Massachusetts has some reservations, but they are still seemingly towards it. They are just more concerned about the nuance. So for those who are worried about alternatives, I just wanted to bring a little bit of knowledge to the floor. And as a personal citizen, I have now bought several reusable bags. I keep them in the trunk of my car. I missed the cleanup this year because of the timing of Wilmington's town meeting, but in the past, it's been plastic bags, it's been nips, it's been discarded lotto tickets. We're talking about bringing back a lotto program to recycle and help clean it up, but these are small things, and not to get too far off topic, I stand and support the free market has its rescue on the way. I have my faith in it, and I think before we know it, we'll have an alternative at cost to what a plastic bag is today. Thank you.
Sir, before you speak, I just want, Mr. Francis, are you last in line still?
There is somebody behind me now.
Ma'am, we had a motion to move the question when Mr. Francis was last in line. I have to take a vote on that before I can allow you to speak after he finishes. I'm sorry?
Give up my spot so that she could speak.
Well, sit down then. Sir.
Hi, Chris Mullins, 758 Whipple. I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm not going to be as eloquent as Dave. My family has lived in town for the last decade. My wife and I are raising our children here. We're also raising our children to respect and appreciate the outdoors. When we camp, we don't just carry in, carry out. We clean our trash and leave with more than we brought. When we attend town cleanup, we work hard and leave with more calluses than we arrived with. For us, to love nature is to love this country and the environment. Nobody came to this meeting unaware of the issues associated with single-use plastic bags and the problems they cause. Although it can sometimes be inconvenient, I believe that taking any steps to take care of the environment in this town is actually pretty damn patriotic. This is why I'm voting to keep this ban in place. Thank you.
Sir.
My name's Ken Michaud, and I'm from 76 Patrick Road. So I have some remarks, but first I have a question for, I guess, the town manager or whoever would know. So do you have any data on how much litter is collected annually before the ban, and what percentage was by weight was plastic bags? Okay.
Mr. Town Manager.
No, we don't have that data. It's too difficult to gather.
Okay. So it seems like we have a lot of narratives here, but we don't really have a lot of data. So for my remarks here, first I'd like us to find some common ground. We all believe in protecting the environment. The question is how we should do so and what the appropriate role of government is in our society. There are two possible environmental concerns here. The first is what it takes to make the bags, and the second is what happens after they're used. With regards to the issue of where they come from, in other words, the environmental damage that's done through their production, let me cite a few facts. A series of studies has found that paper bags are worse for the environment. They require cutting down and processing trees, which involves lots of water, toxic chemicals, fuel, and heavy machinery. So what about cloth bags? A study in Denmark of reusable cloth bags found that you would need to use one 20,000 times to make it better for the environment than a plastic bag. With regards to the issue of where they go after they're used, let me first cite a few facts and then tell you my personal experiences. A study of California's ban from the University of Sydney found that sales of plastic trash bags jumped after the ban was implemented. This was particularly the case for smaller 4-gallon bags, which jumped 120%. This same study found that cities that banned plastic bags saw a surge in the use of paper bags, which they estimate resulted in about 80 million pounds of extra paper trash per year. Now for my personal experience. I moved to Tewksbury 2.5 years ago. I bought a box of trash bags when I moved in, and I have not bought any since in 2.5 years. I use every single disposable grocery bag for trash, some in my bathrooms, but also in other areas of the house. Finally, I'd like to discuss values for a moment. What is the appropriate role for local government in our society? My belief is that local government should focus on its core mission, educating our children, protecting the public from danger, maintaining our public parks and infrastructure. So what role does that leave for the government in a case like plastic bags? There's a reasonable case to be made that we have a litter problem, but the question is how best to address it. Should we raise fines on litterers, impose a fee on disposable bags to encourage reuse without banning them, start a public awareness campaign? Those are, in my view, potentially legitimate and narrowly tailored solutions to the problem at hand. Instead, we have a government imposing a top-down mandate that only addresses one tiny aspect of litter and does so with a flat-out ban. Is there no problem small enough for government to solve? What's next? Banning big gulps, Dunkin' Donuts cups, straws, takeout containers? You heard some other people get up here and argue just that. There is no principled reason to support the bag ban and not all of those. In fact, my initial plan was to get up here and propose a motion to ban all of those, but then I studied up on the rules and realized I'd be out of order. But that's the road that we're headed down. And for that reason, I urge you to vote for this article and send a message that we want government to find real solutions to major problems, not to micromanage private businesses and residents. Thank you.
Sir.
Michael Ambiaso, 30 Lenz Way, Tewksbury. Without going over anything else that's been said, I want to add 5 points. First of all the paper bags that I get say made from recycled materials. Second of all, many paper bags have handles. I know there was some concern about bags ripping, paper bags ripping, but if more businesses use paper bags that have handles, then there will be less ripping, easier to handle. Also, probably you all know that when you get a week's worth of groceries, you end up with 10 to 15 plastic bags previously. Now that can be reduced to 3, 4, 5 bags at the most, paper bags. I believe that a ban on foam and plastic cups and straws, plastic straws, should come next. Thank you. So I am opposed to this motion.
Thank you. Ma'am.
I'm Lee Toth, Francis Lee Toth, 1044 Andover Street. I also am opposed to this amendment, or to this article. The plastics industry as a whole is going to have to take responsibility for making their plastic biodegradable. We're starting in a small place, but it isn't just bags that are causing the problem. Anything in plastic is generally eternal, and that's not right. If we don't start someplace, and if we don't hit them in the pocketbook, it's not going to change.
Ma'am.
Okay, thank you for giving me your spot. I hope I make it worthwhile. My name is Patty Saki. I'm at 55 Kearsarge Street, and I'll be honest, I'm not a runner or a walker, but I do see the bags and I know they exist. But I can say that, you know, I've born and raised in Tewksbury. My kids go to the schools here. I'm class of '87 from Tewksbury High School. Honestly, I've seen a lot of change in this town, and in my opinion, it hasn't all been great. This is the first town meeting I've ever attended. I'm not proud of that, but the reason why I'm here is because of the pride that I feel in my hometown today. So I felt compelled to show up. I'm a teacher. It's my job to help produce and shape educated, informed, productive citizens who will make educated, knowledge-based decisions about our community, both locally and globally. I like to lead by example, so here I stand. Repealing this amendment is a mistake. It perpetuates the ignorance of those who turn a blind eye to the environmental issues and the crisis that we face. I'm proud of my little town for taking this big step. The average American family takes home almost 1,500 plastic bags annually. These plastic bags have a use for 12 minutes on average, and it takes at least 500 years for each bag to decompose. Over 100,000 marine animals die annually because of plastic bags. We're already on the map because of this issue. Let's make the news for good reasons and do the right thing tonight.
Thank you. We have a motion to move the question. The purpose of the motion is to end debate on the article. If you wish to end debate, vote yes. If you wish to continue debate, vote no. All those in favor of moving the question signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. We'll move the question. We have a motion for indefinite postponement. We take action on this motion before the motion to adopt. Indefinite postponement is a negative action. Its intent is to defeat the article. If you wish to defeat the article, vote in favor of indefinite postponement. If you wish to vote on the adoption of the article, vote in opposition to indefinite postponement. We will be taking a standing count. All those in favor of indefinite postponement of Article 28, please signify by rising. Counters, please count. All those opposed to indefinite postponement, please signify by rising. Counters, please count. On indefinite postponement, yes 217, no 36. Indefinite postponement prevails. Article 29, Mr. Wilson.
Yes, on Article 29, the Finance Committee has no recommendation.
Is the proponent of Article 29 in the hall? Seeing none, I had to speak to the proponent because the motion in the article as written is not in order. It is not in a proper format for discussion. If the proponent is not here to discuss my suggested change to him, then we will take no action on this article tonight. No. No, we will just take no action. So we will just pass Article 29. I'm sorry?
Pass meaning skipping or pass meaning passive?
Pass, oh, I'm sorry. It's a good question. We will pass on discussing it or voting on it. We will take no action on this article this evening. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. It's a great point. There was one article in the consent calendar that was held for debate on Monday. That was Article 3-32, which is on page 6 of the warrant. Mr. Wilson, on Article 3-32.
Yes, the Finance Committee makes a motion to adopt Article 3-32.
Is there any discussion? Ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Laura Kaplan, and I reside at 11 Lanaka Road. And I just have one question, town moderator, for the town manager, I assume. I'd like to know how much was allotted to the town of Tewksbury from the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts for Chapter 90 funds this year, which originally were given to communities for installation of sidewalks. But I understand it to be that the Chapter 90 funds is used for a lot of other things as well. So I just wanted to be mindful of the amount of money that the town of Tewksbury did receive for Chapter 90 funds this year, if I could. Thank you.
The amount that was allotted to the town was $921,000.
And could I also bother you, town manager, for one other question, please? Of the $921,000 given to the town of Tewksbury for installation of sidewalks, is it $250,000 only that's being utilized for installation of sidewalks on Shawsheen this year, sir?
So the $921,000, we did not spend any of that money on sidewalks. We used it to pave roads and to do some drainage. Sidewalks have been funded by another source of funds in town. This year we used a stabilization fund. In previous years we have used free cash. We've also applied for complete street grants that funded sidewalks on Shawsheen Street for that project. Chapter 90, because $921,000 is a lot of money, but when it comes to paving roads or doing drainage, it doesn't go as far as we would like. So we haven't used it for sidewalks, but we have addressed sidewalks by other funds in town.
And I know roadworks is very important. I drive a vehicle like many others, but Representative Maselli educated me, and I made a promise to him that I would keep educated on Chapter 90 funds, because I did not know anything about it, and that what it is, if I may indulge everyone, is that Chapter 90 funds were given to communities for installation of sidewalks. And if anybody walks and runs outside of our neighborhood, there's hardly any. We've been trying to make a difference in town, and I thank all of the board for that work. But I've attended information meetings and was told that they were going to utilize more of the Chapter 90s for sidewalks. So I only hope and pray that that will continue, because there is a need for sidewalks to be installed throughout our town. And I know that we do need roads, but maybe there's a way to come to a compromise and have funding for our roadways elsewhere as well. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Is there any further Mr. Robertson?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. If I just may speak to your concerns, the town manager and your select board have been active in advocating for what we know as the Pedestrian Mobility Master Plan, which is sidewalks. We are working, and in fact, we're going through several bond issuance over the coming of the year. We've already drafted amendments specifically earmarking for sidewalks in Tewksbury and Wilmington. What the final product will look like will be up to your local officials, whether they want to do granite, which will obviously decrease from the overall length, or if they're going to do an asphalt curbing or what have you. That's among the power of you citizens. But it is a concern that they made abundantly clear to me after the actual surface of Route 38 and the travel through the intersection. Sidewalks is among the top 3 priorities they're consistently calling about. So I just want to let you know that we have heard you, and we're working to bring additional monies to expedite that pedestrian mobility master plan. It is on our radar, absolutely. So apologize about the time frame, but we're working on it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Is there any further discussion on Article 3-32? Could I ask a resident to assist?
I can get it, I think.
Oh, you can get it, Rich? Okay.
I hope. Thank you.
Mr. Lavasser.
Mr. Moderator, Rich Lavasser, 25 Anthony Road. If we are going to do sidewalks, let's do real sidewalks. Sidewalks with pavement on top, like in the condition I'm in, don't work. There's frost heaves, they crack, weeds grow up in between them. If we're going to do sidewalks, let's do real sidewalks with granite curbs and cement, the way they've done in cities. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on Article 3-32? Seeing none, we have a motion to adopt Article 3-32. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed signify by saying no. Article 3-32 is adopted. That completes Section 2 of the annual town meeting. We will now move to Section 3, which begins with Article 34 on page 27 of the warrant. Before we begin discussion, I just want to let people know how these things will run. The first article was submitted by the Board of Selectmen. The other articles throughout the rest of the warrant were citizen petitions. Mr. Wilson will continue to speak first, then Mr. Johnson, the chairman of the Planning Board, will speak to give us the Planning Board's recommendation, and then the proponent of the articles will speak. In regards to Article 34, we will have two presentations, two speakers from the Board of Selectmen, Mr. Kelly and Mr. Kratman, after Mr. Johnson. Before, I just want to let people know there is also a scrivener's error in Article 34. In Section 5291, locations, in the second line, fifth word from the end, the word further should be closer. So that's a fairly important one. It's a scrivener's. It was a mistake in the printing, but it's an important word. So just I want everybody to make, and if there's no objection, we'll accept that as a scrivener's error, and we'll move forward. Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
Yes. The Finance Committee on some of these Planning Board articles made a recommendation on ones that had a financial impact on the town. On the other ones, we will defer to the Planning Board. So on Article 34, the Finance Committee recommends adoption of Article 34 unanimously.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson. Okay. And Mr. Johnson, we'll need you to make a motion to adopt. Okay.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Planning Board also unanimously recommended adoption of Article 34.
And you'll move that?
So moved.
Okay. Yes. Mr. Kelly.
I just want to provide some quick commentary. This article was presented in the fall, and the article did not pass. There was mass confusion for this particular article. So the selectmen, along with the town manager and the assistant town manager, we did modify a compelling word. That compelling word was state to interstate. Folks in Tewksbury thought we were going to have billboards up and down 38. That's not the case. So the article clearly states they're going to be on Interstate 93 and or 495. So for us, this is highly regulated at the state and federal level. Mr. Kratman is going to speak further on the billboards, but we do believe this is a significant revenue stream. We're always tasked to say, how do we come up with more revenue to lower taxes in our community? For me, as a selectman for 2 years and as a resident, this is an absolute no-brainer for this town to approve. I'm going to let Mr. Kratman speak further on this article.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kratman.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Moderator. I've done
extensive research on the billboards that are going up in other communities and going around our community. I know there's a lot of concern about having eyesores in our community and causing traffic delays and those type of things. There's been many researches done from following communities, and they really do not impact traffic of slowing people from slowing down looking at them, because they're going at such a quick rate, they don't really cause any traffic concerns. And the concerning thing is that they are moving. Most of the billboards used to be in the cities. They were in Boston, Quincy, those type of places, but they're coming this way. They're moving up into our community. And so what is happening in a number of our communities is they're building them right next to the border of our communities. So right now we have an ordinance that does not allow billboards in our community. And there was somebody that wanted to come into our community and build one. We could not allow them to do it. So what they did is they went right across the street and they put it in Lowell. So if you drive down the end of 38, right by 495, when you're getting on the ramp right there, you would think you're in Tewksbury when you're getting on the ramp, but there's a billboard there. It's an electronic billboard there, and the city of Lowell is getting the revenue for it. So over 20 years, they're going to get $2 million in revenue for that one board, that we are not getting anything. We have to look at it every day, but I don't know if anybody notices, it's there. And so they are coming up here, they're coming to this area. We can only impact what we can vote on in our community. So if we keep our ordinance to not allow it, that's not stopping them from putting it 10 feet over the border. I mean, we have a lot of our ramp sections that border other towns. When you come off of Dascom Road, you've got Tewksbury and Andover. When we're looking at these type of billboards that will be going up, the maximum that we could possibly put up is 3, maybe 4. They have to be in commercial areas. They can't be near a cemetery. They can't be near an off-ramp. They can't be by parks. There's all different things that the outdoor advertisement does not allow these things to do. They have to be so they're not going to be near somebody's house glaring in your window. They're going to be off interstate highway. And honestly, you probably won't see them unless you're driving out there. And they are coming up in this area. So it's just a matter of, I mean, we're talking about building sidewalks in our community. If we were to build 3 billboards in over 20 years, have $6 million over 20 years, that's a lot of sidewalks to build in our communities. That's a lot of money that could offset our water and sewer debt. We're always looking for other ways of offsetting our debt. It's up to everybody to make a vote, but you ask us to try to find innovative ways to try to come up with funds that doesn't raise your taxes every day. This is something that would come up. We'd have a 20-year stream of revenue. It would not be next to somebody's home. It would be off interstate highway, and I think it's something that we should seriously look at. So I thank you for your consideration. Is there any discussion on Article 34? Ma'am.
Ruth Chu, 338 North Billerica Road. I was here for the October meeting when we first discussed this proposal. At that meeting, I was told that on 495 we could be looking at 4 billboards, and on Route 93 we could be looking at about 2. So that is not consistent with the 3 that Mr. Kratman had indicated. So I'd like to know how this zoning is different from what was proposed in October.
Mr. Kratman. When we came here in October, we were looking at what could be and what could not be locations. We did not go out and look at all the locations of what's zoned. This is all governed by the outdoor advertisement of what can be and what cannot. So when we went out and we looked at it, we did a reevaluation, and we could not do, there wasn't 6 locations that we came up with of what we looked at, like if there could be, but we did, after further analysis, it's been lowered. You have to meet certain criteria of what it is, and so far, what we found on 93, there's possibly only 1 location, and on 495, there could be possibly 3, could be 2. It really depends on what the businesses are. It has to be zoned a certain way, and so after doing reevaluation of what the properties that were out there, we can't get that many out there.
I'd just like to point out on the supplemental information handout, under the billboard signage, third paragraph down, second sentence, it says approximately 5 to 7 sites may be eligible. So again, you're quoting the low number, but according to the supplemental, it could be upwards of 7. I'd also like to get clarification as to how much mileage we're talking about on 495 and 93. What's the span?
Do we have that information? On the 2 highways within the town. We do not have that information.
A lot of these articles that are critical, there's just not any real research being done for us to make an educated decision on. I make a motion for indefinite postponement.
Thank you. Sir.
Charlie Lucia, 276 Vale Street. I'm kind of taken back where I'm out of the loop too, like one of the ladies earlier, about maybe I wish I did a little more research on this, but I'm going to throw it out there, see what sticks. This is kind of all over the place, just glancing at it. It doesn't say anything about how high these signs can be off the ground. I personally live right at Interstate 93, and it's already a horror show. The town, the state doesn't do anything about the cars that are using the slow lane as a high-speed lane. I got to put up with that. And I'm probably one of the perfect candidates in town for that sign to look right out my back door across the street where I'm jumping ahead to Article 38. If that passes, that's going to be a perfect place for that person, whoever owns that, to put that sign there, which is just, I wish these were switched around. I think it would be a little more clear to some of us. And I like someone explained to me, where does that $2 million revenue, how is that, how do we make that? How do we make $2 million per sign? What little I saw in here, we're only charging them $2,500 for a permit fee, which is a joke for something that big. And then we have to look at another eyesore in the town, people putting graffiti. You go up and down 93, 495, anything the kids could put their name on it, they put their name on it. I'll end it at this because it'll bore everybody. Maybe 30 years ago we should have voted down plastic bags, and here we are voting on them now to get rid of them. I think we should still stay a small town and be the holdout that we can and say no to the signs, because who knows what they're going to be advertising on them. Smoking for kids, drinking, we don't know. Doesn't say anything in here. We're going to be leaving it up to the townspeople to give them the okay. I don't think we're going to get the okay as the citizens to say what goes up on them billboards. We're just giving them the right to say that they can have them. I say no. Thank you.
Thank you. Before the next speaker, could we get an explanation of the financial aspects, please? Mr. Kratman.
If we were allowed to have billboards in the community, there would be a host agreement signed with the billboard companies. And most host agreements is $50,000 per board that are going. That's like the average of what we found. So over 20 years, that's where we'd be coming up per side of it. So that's where it usually comes up with. So it would be $2 million over that period of time.
Ma'am.
Lee Toth, 1044 Andover Street. As I recall, the big question we had at the fall town meeting was, we have no way of deciding what will go onto those billboards. And because it is a right for people to write whatever they want. I remember being concerned about that. Someone also had mentioned that the billboards down in Florida are pretty obnoxious, and that could happen here as well. I see on page 29, the proposed off-premise sign shall not adversely affect the abutting neighborhood.
Ma'am, could you let us know what section
Yes.
you're actually reading, just for the voters?
5295, criteria for approval. B. Okay. The proposed off-premise sign shall not adversely affect the abutting neighborhood or have the effect of causing a hazard to motorists. Would that mean that our town can decide whether or not this would be appropriate?
Mr. Sadwick.
Steve Sadwick, Assistant Town Manager. The answer to your question is yes. And I also wanted to point out for you and for everyone else that's listening, what's proposed here before you this evening is for town zoning change. There is a parallel state process that has probably 15 pages of regulations as far as citing of the signs, messaging of the signs, timing of the signs. So there's a lot of things that are in the state CMR, which is Code of Massachusetts regulations, that would govern a billboard in town. The thing of it is that you can't get your state permit without having a town zoning approval. So they're going to be working hand in hand. Someone's going to come into the town and ask for a permit for that billboard, and if they're not meeting what the state requirements are, they're not going to get their state permit. So you have dual protection, really, under the system because of where the state has its regulations established already.
So does that cover the free speech problem?
There are some requirements. First of all, in any type of sign, there is a freedom of speech issue. That's a First Amendment right. So there's a level of there's only so much we can govern. There's been a recent Supreme Court decision over messaging on signs, but there are things on here, including the state regulations has public service announcement requirements that billboards are supposed to be doing, and you referenced that, or a previous speaker may have referenced about Florida and obnoxious signs. I don't think anyone that drives by any of the signs in Massachusetts has seen something that has been outside of the realm of ordinary advertising. If you go down 128 or you're down 93, you're not seeing something that is pushing the limits. You have to remember they have their standards, the companies themselves have their standards that they're trying to meet. If they're known as a problem in communities, they're not going to get permits elsewhere. So that all comes into play also.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am.
Hello, Jessica Randolph, 1484 Andover Street. I have a question regarding location. If someone could clarify for me a section off of North Street and 495, that would be before the fire station. It would be on the east side where International Way is. I think there was a hotel that was proposed for that space. I don't know what happened with that. Is that a possible location for a billboard? That is, so us people traveling up and down North Street, will they see that as a billboard site?
Mr. Sadwick.
You may see it on the North Street Bridge. I don't know if I would say that you would see it driving on North Street itself, other than the overpass on 495, if one were to be located there.
Thank you.
Mrs. Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Nancy Reed, 55 Polaris Lane, Tewksbury, obviously. I have a question about how this bylaw relates to the code of the state, and do they define exactly what distances it can be from a residence? I understand it has to be in a heavy industry or the office research district, but is there any, say, a setback within that, away from residential?
Mrs. Sadwick.
So under one of the provisions in the state code, the area in which the sign is to be located is not predominantly residential, agricultural, or open space or natural area. And then there is another place that I would have to look, Nancy, that I think specifically called out that it wouldn't have an adverse impact on a residential neighborhood. But I'd have to look more closely at it.
Okay. Knowing how sometimes these things get interpreted, it ends up being decided by some consultant that says the lighting is fine. I mean, I've seen this many times. So what I would like to do is add an amendment to section 5291 under locations, and where it says no off-premise sign, edge shall be located closer than 25 feet from the interstate highway right-of-way. I would add, or within 1,000 feet of a residential or multifamily district or use.
Can I have that amendment in writing, please?
Yes. Thank you very much.
We're going to discuss the amendment now before we continue discussion on the article, and I'll read the amendment so it's clear to the voters. Do it with the glasses that I can actually see. So in section 5291, after the end of that section, we'll extend that last sentence to say, or within 1,000 feet of a residential or multifamily district or use. That's the entire amendment. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Sir.
Charlie Lucia Jr., 184 Veal Street. I second that amendment. I actually have a property line that abuts Interstate 93. On the exact opposite side of Interstate 93 is Article 38, where they are proposing to change that to office research. Just like everyone here, I can only imagine, no one would want to walk out to their backyard and see a giant billboard. And that's exactly what would happen if, and I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but Article 38, office research, if a billboard was to be able to go up along either interstate, my property, my parents' property, and residents on Veal Street's properties would go to their front or backyards and see a giant billboard. So I second that amendment.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. On the amendment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. The amendment passes. Further discussion on the article as amended. Sir.
Mark Platek, 1535 Main Street. So I'm I mean, this is a pretty complete plan, I feel like. You guys did a great job, and you should be commended for that. But the fact of the matter is, I hate billboards, I hate advertising, and to be honest, I'd be totally okay paying a little bit more in tax if I don't have to look at it in town. So I fully support the earlier motion to dismiss this. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Francis.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I want to make a motion to move the question.
Thank you. After the last voter standing in line currently, we will move the question. Mr. Panelitis.
Bruce Panelitis, Foster Road. I was going to do the same thing. So instead, I'll just say there's not too many times we get what is the equivalent of a free lunch here. This is free revenue to the town with very little impact, and we should support this article.
Thank you. Ma'am.
Susan Bullen, 19 Chester Street, Tewksbury, Massachusetts. I have been a resident since 1978. I have paid my taxes.
Can you pull the microphone
I
down?
have paid my taxes and raised 4 children here. They've gone through the schools. I have had no problem voting for the schools. But where's the money coming from? We're on fixed incomes. I wanted the schools to be built. But why does the town refuse to let business in town? This is a no-win situation. We're going to bring revenue in. It's not going to impact anybody on 93 or 495. If you built a house in the middle of town, no matter what they did, like that big, ugly eyesore on Main Street, that's there. We all have to look at it. That impacts us every day. But driving up and down 495, 93, you see billboards everywhere. I think we need some money in town. I think we need to reconsider our business in town. Let's get real here. My kids can't afford to live here anymore. I'm barely living here. Let's get some business in town.
Mr. Sellison.
Mr. Moderator, thank you very much. Jerry Sellison, 80 Redgate Road, former selectman, former town moderator. I'm here in speaking on behalf of this article. I think this is a good opportunity for the town to generate some additional revenue. One of the things I've discovered recently, I've made a number of trips into Boston. I haven't been into Boston for a long time. Long story, I've been going into Boston a lot lately. I will tell you, you go up and down Interstate 93, you will see all kinds of electronic billboards. I think this is an opportunity, and if we pass on this opportunity, rest assured, communities like Lowell, communities like Andover, communities like Wilmington will not pass on this opportunity. And we'll be seeing electronic billboards up and down 93 and 495, and they won't be generating any revenue for this community. And the only other thing I wanted to add is a lot of people may or may not be aware of this, that every nonprofit in this community is allowed up to 5 hours per month to put advertisements and promote their various events and activities on these signs. That's 5 hours per month per sign. And having recently gone to a meeting at the public library, I will tell you we have over 35 nonprofits in this community, and that would be a boon for them as well. So I will vote in support of this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lucia, I have to ask that you allow the other voters to speak first before you speak again. Ma'am.
Erin Knife, 11 Sharon Street. So did you not hear them say millions of dollars for us? I mean, we're always asking our selectmen to find money, find ways to lower our taxes, find ways to bring money into the town, yet every time they come up with something, 600 people stand up here and whine about it. We need the money. This town needs the money. We need new schools. We need a new field. We need a lot of new things. We need the money. They'll put Amber Alerts on these boards, Redmond sporting events announcements on these boards. It's not going to be built in your backyard. It's major highways. It's not on 38. It's not in anybody's yard. Driver safety messages. I mean, Mass DOT did a study, I believe. No increase in traffic. You drive by billboards every day. How much attention do you really, really pay to them? So if it's not our town, it's going to be another town. So either we take the money or we give the money away.
Thank you. Before the next speaker, After this gentleman and Mr. Lucia, who was in line when the motion to move the question was made, I will be taking a vote to move the question. No, Mr. Lavassi, you were next to the podium, you're right. Mr. Cook, I'll have to ask you to wait until after we move the question, because I had a motion and I have to take a vote on that.
Hi, my name is Mike Genera, 604 Clark Road. I was paying attention when that amendment was passed, and I heard that it was 1,000 feet from residential district or use that a sign could be placed. Is that correct? Yes. Well, my question is, how many signs, potential sign locations, would that eliminate and or leave?
Probably have to study that, right? Yeah, they would have to study that because it changes the allowable zone, so I don't think we'd have an answer to that.
Potentially the majority of signs would be, if not all of them, would be eliminated.
I don't think we can answer that.
Thank you much.
Hello.
Sir.
My name is Robert Wald. I live at 97 Cardigan Road and have for the last 28 years. We're treating this like it's a pot of gold, and it would be nice to have a pot of gold, but this isn't it. I heard Mr. Crackman say that the signs were typically brought in $50,000 a year, and that there might be 3 of them. That means if we have, again, another thing I heard this evening, 6,000 households, we're talking $25 per household in a year. So really the question is, do you as a voter want to avoid this kind of change to the city for $25 in of your income in a year? It's not much money.
Mr. Lavasser.
Thank you. Hi again, Rich Lavasser, 25 Anthony Road. So there's been a lot of talk back and forth. Can we just actually nail down where you're talking about for these signs, location-wise? The actual location. You went out and looked at them.
Mr. Cratton.
With the amendment, I mean, we had the billboard companies go out and look to find if they could find locations, because they came to us when they had the original one that was going up in Lowell, and we left it up to them to go say if they could find locations. And without this being passed, we do not have specific locations, but it has to be within the industrial, commercial locations, and it has to be 2 businesses. It has to be away from, like I said, parks, ramps. So it really limits the locations of what they can be. It would be up to them to come to us and meet all those criteria to be able to build one in our community, and we would hold them to that. So they'd have to go and find the location that would actually do that. So with the new setback, and that puts a whole new, I'm not really sure if we'd even be able to get a billboard with the new setback with what's going on. So they would have to go out, do the research, come to us. This is just to have them come and apply to us. We're not granting them. They'd have to come to us and apply with an application and meet every one of the criteria. So that was the whole purpose of this article.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Mr. Lucia. As I said, Mr. Cook.
Point of order.
Okay, if you have a point of order, that is interruptible. Yes, sir. What is your point of order?
Thank you. Richard Chuko, 73 Emerald Court. In Mrs. Reed's amendment, did she mean within the limits of Tewksbury? Because if you say zoned residential or multifamily, then we're going to be looking at the Lowell billboard again, versus we might meet all the other criteria, but Lowell is zoned residential across our line everywhere. So I didn't know, did that mean just in Tewksbury, because I think people would like to know that.
I will have to consult with town council for his opinion.
In my view, the way the amendment reads, If there's a residence in Lowell, it applies. If there's a residence in Andover, it applies because it's not restricted in any way.
Mr. Lucia.
Charlie Lucia, 276 Vale Street.
Actually, before you start, I just want to ask you a question. You made the motion for indefinite postponement, I believe, is that correct? No. Oh, you did, oh, sorry, ma'am. Can I assume that your motion for indefinite postponement is on the article as amended as well? Yes. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
Does anybody know if Andover has these signs? Or North Andover? No one knows? I bet you they don't. Because they're the only ones that have a wall on 93, because they don't want to look at that crap.
Do we know
Excuse
the
my
answer
language.
to that question?
And I just want to say a few more things.
I want to get your question answered.
Okay.
Do we know if Andover allows billboards on Andover does not allow them. We do not know about North Andover.
Yeah, I know they don't, and that's a guess. I'm insulted by some of the board members that throw out the words, it's a no-brainer, okay? Because it is a brainer for me. And the other people, one of the other persons said, it doesn't affect anybody. It affects me and many other people that I'm speaking for, whether now or later when those signs go up. I'd like to know how many people, by a raise of hands throughout the board from here up, actually live near 495 and 93 that are going to see this. I bet you not one of them. I won't get any votes, but I bet you they won't. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can look right at it like I can out my door.
The request is out of order, sir.
I understand, but I throw it out there. Closing, couple words. We're looking to raise money. I love the bag thing. Again, coming back to the bag thing, it brings stuff up. We want to fix the pollution in this town. The biggest problem I see in this town, and I've seen it throughout the country, is the lousy scratch tickets. Those scratch tickets bring revenue into this town, but we should be taxing them a nickel and then recycle them, and that would be a $50,000 a year.
You've gone beyond the scope.
I know. I throw it out there anyway, see what sticks.
Is there any further discussion on Article 34? Well, actually, I wasn't supposed to ask that. I was supposed to ask about voting to move the question. I have to ask the planning board a question first. Does your motion to adopt, is that to adopt as amended at this point? If not, I need someone. I understand that, but before I take a vote on moving the question, I have to have all the motions on the article in place. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Planning Board does not support the adoption of the article with the amendment, as it more than likely wipes out all the sites that could possibly be zoned for the sign, making it pointless. So with that much with 1,000 feet put in as an amendment, it's going to probably wipe out every site that could possibly be used for the sign, making the article pointless. So no, the board does not support it as amended.
Thank you. Mrs. Reed, as the proponent of the amendment, can I assume that there was an implicit motion to adopt as amended with your amendment? Thank you. Okay. We have a motion to move the question. By now, you know what moving the question means. If you wish to move the question, vote yes. If you wish to continue debate, vote no. All those in favor of moving the question, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. We will move the question. I have a motion for indefinite postponement of the article as amended. Indefinite postponement is a negative motion. Its intent is to defeat the article. It requires a majority vote to prevail. If you wish to defeat the article, vote in favor of indefinite postponement. If you wish to vote on the adoption of the article as amended, vote in opposition to indefinite postponement. Oh, pardon. Yes.
Clarification. If you vote to indefinitely postpone under this, then...
Yes, if you could, if it's anything more than something quick. Mr. Johnson.
Sorry, I'm just a little unclear. So if we're voting to indefinitely postpone, are we indefinitely postponing the article only as amended and then we'll return to the original article? Or is this meant to postpone
No.
in total?
If the article as amended is now the article. The original article is amended and is not up for vote.
Okay.
Mr. Panelitis, you have a point of order?
Just a point of information. Should the amended article pass, we could then come back potentially in the fall and adjust that 1,000 feet, potentially. Is that correct?
You guys can do whatever you want in the fall, yes.
Just confirming. Thank you.
I'm moving to Kennebunkport in the summer. Let's see. Uh-oh. Indefinite postponement. Okay. All those in favor of indefinite postponement of Article 34 as amended, please signify by rising. All those in favor of indefinite postponement, please signify by rising. Counters, please count. Officers, could you ask the wardens if they'd like to come in for the vote, please? I wrote down to do that 4 times. I forgot to do it.
Excuse me, moderator, point of order.
Yes, sir. Please go to the mic.
Excuse me, is it proper to ask them to come in to vote when they weren't in the room to hear all the arguments for and con back and forth about
They
it?
can hear. There's audio in the lobby.
Oh, so they could hear out there so they know what's going
Yes,
on?
and they specifically requested to come in, and I forgot to allow it before we started.
All right.
And I just want to make sure that I get them.
Thank you, I just want to make sure they
Yep.
were able to hear
Yep.
it.
Thank you. Are they in? I can't see. Yes. If you have a point of order, please go to the microphone.
Hi, Marissa Brown, 142 Carter Street. Nobody wants this to be over more than me, so I apologize. I just have a a kind of a problem, though, with what happened. So I feel like we all voted on an amendment that we really didn't understand the repercussion. I really wish that the planning board was allowed to give their recommendation prior to us voting on the amendment.
Well, the opportunity to do that was during the discussion of the amendment. That the amendment is set. There is no point of order that can be brought up regarding the amendment. The amendment's been passed and is part of the article. So
Okay.
we're voting on the article as amended now.
Then what was the point on asking them for their recommendation after the
Well,
amendment was already adopted?
We are in the middle of a... We have a point of order. Could you repeat your question, please?
I was just wondering why was the point on having the
Yes,
recommendation
thank
for
you.
the clarification if we...
The reason that I had to ask them about their recommendation was because the planning board made the original motion to adopt the article as written in the warrant. I had to ask them if they still supported the amended article, because if I did not, I had to ask the proponent of the amendment if they were motioning to adopt the article, so that we could vote on a motion to adopt the amended article. It had nothing to do with them, analyzing, or it was just to know whether they still supported the amended article.
Okay. Well, thanks.
Thank you.
Point of clarification, Mr. Moderator?
Is this a point of order?
Just a point of clarification, if I might. There seems to be some confusion in the stands. We are voting on the article as amended.
We are right now voting on indefinite postponement of the article as amended.
Right. So if we vote for indefinite postponement,
If
then we
indefinite
go to the original
if indefinite
article.
postponement prevails, the article is dead. If indefinite postponement fails, then we will vote on adoption of the amended article.
Thank you.
Please continue the count. Have we completed the count? We are now voting for those in favor of indefinite postponement.
No, we're now...
We're all set?
Yes.
We've completed that count. Thank you. All those opposed to indefinite postponement, please signify by rising. Counters, please count. On indefinite postponement, yes, 40, no, 167. Indefinite postponement does not prevail. Now, on the article as amended, this is a zoning bylaw change. It requires a 2/3 vote to pass. All those in favor of the adoption of Article 34 as amended, please signify by rising. Counters, please count. All those opposed to Article 34 as amended, please signify by rising. Counters, please count. On Article 34 as amended, yes, 181, no, 32. It required 142 to pass. Article 34 is adopted as amended. Article 35, Mr. Wilson.
Yes, the Finance Committee defers to the Planning Board.
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Planning Board voted unanimously for adoption of Article 35, and this is a citizen petition.
30.
Sorry. The Planning Board voted unanimously for adoption of this article. This is a citizen petition, so we'll give it to them to discuss it further.
Mr. Plunkett, are you representing Mr. Andela?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Plunkett.
For the record, David Plunkett, 257 Fisk Street. Mr. Moderator, this article is to change a parcel of land that's currently zoned heavy industrial to the HI1 district, which is basically the heavy industrial zone uses minus 2 uses that have to do with alcohol sales and allow motor vehicle repairs. The whole purpose of creating the HI1 district several years back was to recognize the fact that when we took out automotive repair, the whole intent was to take it away from our main Route 38 corridor, the East Street corridor, that type of location. Excuse me. So this parcel here is on Kittredge Avenue. It's a 1.87 acre parcel of land that is off of the main thoroughfare. It's located on the back side, is down below it is Walmart. On the other side of the parcel is the Penny junkyard. And there's currently a 9,600 square foot building on it. So we're looking and discussing here tonight about how, you know, the town has undertaken very important steps. Last Monday, voted for the school. It's great for the town. Other things that are necessary and the town is to be proud of, but we need to help our business community. We need to expand our commercial base. So what this is doing, it would be achieving the purpose of giving the flexibility, allowing a competitive element to the owner of this heavy industrial zone to be able to compete with other communities surrounding that allow this type of use. So it's a situation that I think is a common sense approach to taking a look at what we have, being supportive of our business community, and making these zoning changes when it makes sense. It's a use that was intended to go into this type of location, and that is what we would achieve. It would allow the owner to compete, flexibility, and help broaden our commercial base. And with that, Mr. Moderator, I move that this town meeting adopt this warrant article.
Thank you. Sir.
Daniel Ronan, 1001 Whipple Road. So if I remember from last town meeting, this was voted down because people just weren't sure what the plan was for, like, what type of business was going to go there. I see that in the executive summary, there's a more clarification, so I appreciate that, but I am confused about that last two lines. It says, uses by special permit from the planning board as set for in Appendix A, Table of Use Regulations, see Section C, line 13. When I go to Appendix A, I think I see Section C, Commercial Uses, but there is no line 13. So I'm just not sure if that's a typo or if I'm reading this wrong. Could I get some clarification on that, please?
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm not sure what you're looking at, but in the table of uses, there is a line 13. Line 13 reads, motor vehicle light service, motor vehicle general and body repair, in Section C.
I'm not blind, right? Commercial.
Sorry?
I believe Mr. Johnson's referencing the zoning bylaw.
Correct.
Not the warrant.
Correct. I thought that was the question, so.
Yes, it is.
Yes. Mr. Moderator, I think that there's a need for clarification also that your reference to this being voted down at the last town meeting, I believe that it might be mistaken that there's a parcel that's out on Astle and Main Street, which is a larger parcel of land, and that has absolutely nothing to do with this parcel of land. This is up off of Kittredge. This wasn't before the town meeting last year. What had come before, and I'm not even sure if it was last year or the year before, but it was that triangle parcel by Astle and Main Street.
Okay.
Has absolutely nothing to do with this parcel.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Sir, would you like to continue?
Sorry about that. It's been explained to me. I appreciate your time.
No problem.
Thank you. Ma'am.
Ruth Chu, 338 North Billbrook Road. I would like to know what's the zoning of the parcels surrounding this particular parcel?
Mr. Plunkett, if you have that map, I'd appreciate you letting the voter know.
There is heavy industrial land behind where the Walmart is, or there is also a heavy industrial use by the Penny Auto Body. In front of it, there is a residential use. But I'd point out that the meeting before the planning board, a resident of that area actually came and spoke in favor of this. So that's basically Walmart. Here it is there, Penny Auto Body. So it's, Walmart, the junkyard, and this is the parcel here.
There's no other H1 there.
No, there's no other H1. It's
Pam, do you have
HI,
anything else?
Not HI1, yeah. Right.
All right. So it's been pointed out that this would be an outlier for HI1, where majority surrounding is HI. So I rise in opposition to this article.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on Article 35? We have a motion to adopt Article 35. Article 35 is a zoning bylaw change. It requires a 2/3 vote. Wrong glasses again. I'm going to take this in reverse. All those opposed to Article 35, please signify by rising. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Counters, please count, because I'm going to miss somebody, and I don't want to miss anybody. All those in favor of Article 35, please signify by rising. And counters, please count. On Article 35, yes, 97, no, 51. It required 99 to pass. Article 35 is not adopted. Article 36, Mr. Wilson.
On Article 36, the Finance Committee recommends adoption.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Planning Board also voted unanimously for adoption of Article 36. It's a citizen petition, so defer to the citizens, the petitioner to discuss further.
Thank you. Did we get the Scrivener's error that HR1 was supposed to be HI1 at the very end? We did. Okay, great. I don't have them. Mr. Plunkett.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. For the record, again, David Plunkett, 257 Fisk Street. Similar to the last presentation, this is changing an HI zoned property to HI1. Again, we look to the location. It's 2 parcels of land off of Lumber Lane, off of East Street. In front of it is the old Muro Pharmacy. To the right of it is the Union site with heavy industrial use, and beside that is the hockey establishment, and then down beside it is the large area of industrial use by the Bowery family. This is a situation where the applicant is someone who has been in town for many years. Mr. Joe Phelan, anyone that has dealt with him knows the type of work that he has done, knows the type of operation that he has dealt, that he carries on at his workplace. And this is, again, the situation where we're voting for approval of schools, and we're voting for things that make sense. We're willing to spend the money, but then you look to what do we do to make certain that we can help our commercial community to expand that commercial base. In this situation here, we have a specific scenario where Mr. Phelan has tenants that will go elsewhere because other areas compete in allowing this type of use. So he has an ultimatum. He has tenants, they're going to leave because they want to expand the business within the town, and he needs this type of flexibility. Again, the HI1 district with the uses that are allowed under HI1, it's not permitted use of right. There still has to be only a use as allowed by a special permit by the planning board. So by allowing this, it doesn't give a green light to a specific project, but it does give our community the ability to have our business people have the flexibility and be able to compete with the outside areas, or, again, in this specific example, we know that there's going to be a loss of a tenant. So it's an opportunity to expand where it makes sense. Utilize the HI1 where it makes sense. This is a property that's isolated, surrounded by all this industrial use, and I move that we adopt this article.
Thank you. Sir.
Jonathan Ricker, 220 Cart Path Road. I live less than a half a mile from this site. It is an industrial area that is the entrance to a very nice residential neighborhood where the kids play in the street and the neighbors talk to each other and we all get along. They have a very prospering business there. They do a very good job. I'm sure they're great landlords. I'm sure they can find plenty of tenants. The environmental impacts from the previous junkyard that were there are still very obvious. Our kids play in the woods. You can see where all of this stuff has leached into the ground. I do not want that to happen less than a half a mile from my house. Changing this zoning would allow that to happen even under the guidance of the planning board, and therefore I'm against this.
Thank you. Ma'am.
Ruth Chu, 338 North Billerica Road. I would just like to also point out that the individual who has proposed Article 37 has also proposed a change in use regulation in Article 37, which basically says that they are looking to revise the use table for HI1 for motor vehicle, motorcycles, trailers, all-terrain vehicles, snowmobiles, boats, and personal watercraft sales, rentals, and leases, which currently are not allowed in an H1 location. So just so that you're aware that the use for this land, if it passes, and if Article 37 passes, we will be looking at those particular industries which are currently not allowed in an HI1 location, nor are they currently allowed in an HI location. I rise in opposition to Article 36.
Thank you. Mrs. Gill.
Yes, Donna Gill, 12 Ellington Road, which is very, very close to this area. I thank Mr. Plunkett for outlining what is there now. He did not mention the individual homes that are there, the residences, which come before where the skating rink is, breakaway ice is. Mr. Phelan has always been a very good neighbor. I have no complaints there. I'm not rising against the article per se, only that I would hope that the planning board, the proponent of the article of what's going in there, what will eventually go in there, to please take a close and considerate look at the intersection that we're talking about. Unfortunately, we don't have a map here that shows exactly where this particular intersection is between East Street, Carter Street, Lumber Lane. Within a 25-foot radius, there are 3 stop signs there right now. When you're coming out of Carter Street and you want to go to the center, you have to go through 2 stop signs, and they're probably less than 25 feet apart. People coming off of East Street, they have no stop sign. They go right through and go right through to Lumber Lane. I'm very cautious about that. I sometimes don't use that, and other people don't use it either. They're using that small section of Leston Street to go from East to Carter and onto the breakaway ice area. We have a lot of traffic coming off of 93 recently. I'm expecting more when the whatever happens in Andover happens. Right across the railroad tracks is the Market Basket Warehouse. It's a little congested there. I would really, really appreciate it, and I will be watching this, that intersection is closely looked at and redesigned if necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
Bob McKenna, 29 Oregon Road. I would vote no for this simply because a neighbor who spoke first is concerned about pollution and trash over, and I wouldn't want that in my backyard. He lives there. He knows the situation better than I do. If a neighbor is opposed to it, I support him in being opposed to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Plunkett, unless he's willing to defer to you, I have to ask you allow Mr. Kuko to speak first. Thank you. Mr. Kuko.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Richard Kuko, 73 Emerald Court. We have to focus on one thing. This property is currently not zoned residential. It's currently not zoned as a park. It's heavy industrial land. We need to keep heavy industrial business in here. As everyone knows, businesses are taxed a little bit higher than residential homes. If residential homes were taxed the same as businesses, we wouldn't have passed a school the other night. So we have to have industry in here. We're talking about a piece that's already zoned heavy industrial. Right now, you could bring in heavy equipment, everything else. So we're talking about maybe allowing some automotive repair and in a future article, some sales. Those uses are benign compared to what is currently allowed in a heavy industrial zone. So just want to think about that. It's not a piece of residential vacant land. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Plunkett.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just, I think, a clarification. There was reference to this site previously being a dump site. Again, I think that there's been confusion relative to this parcel, that going further down on the Bowley property, that might have had that type of use at one point. By just talking to Mr. Phelan, he said this is not the site of a dump. This is a heavy industrial zoned area that currently has business. But what we're talking about is giving the business owner the flexibility and the option to compete with outlying areas so that we are able to sustain our businesses that exist and allow them to grow, allow them to compete. And again, I would request support for approval of this article.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on Article 36? Seeing none. Article 36 is an amendment to the zoning bylaw. It requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor of Article 36, please signify by rising. Counters, please count. All those opposed to Article 36, please signify by rising. Counters, please count. On Article 36, yes 152, no 18, required 114 to pass. Article 36 is adopted. Article 37, Mr. Wilson.
The Finance Committee recommends adoption of Article 37.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Planning Board voted unanimously for adoption of Article 37. Again, a citizen petition, so defer to the citizen to discuss further.
Thank you. Mr. Plunkett.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Again, for the record, David Plunkett, 257 Fifth Street. This is an article that, during all the public hearings, we actually, before the selectmen, Planning Board, Finance Committee, we took it as a single entity, which we couldn't do tonight, but it was hand in hand in terms of the proponent. Again, the applicant is the owner of the two sites that we just rezoned to HI1, and looking for a element that would give further competitive powers to deal with surrounding areas and allow them to retain a tenant who is looking to stay. You know, again, the fears and concerns, it's understood, but that's what the special permit, you know, and say, well, what about the traffic? What about this? Well, right now, there's heavy industrial use going on there anyways, so this is another element of retaining current tenants, and it's a situation where the special permit process requires the planning board to take into account the traffic impact, you know, the impact upon the adjoining neighborhood and things of that sort. Because there has been, you know, when I was on the planning board, we did some permitting and there was some attention given to that intersection. But that will be within the domain of the planning board during the special hearing process. So again, going hand in hand with what we just did to go to HI1, given our business community the ability to compete, given our community the ability to expand our commercial base so that we can support the programs that we rightfully are voting in to benefit the town that have taken place Monday night and tonight. So I would request and move that this article be approved.
Thank you. Any discussion? Ms. Chu.
Ruth Chu, 330 North Billerica Road. I just want to make the voters aware that this is an article which will change all HI1 zoned areas to allow the motor vehicles, etc. So just keep in mind that you are voting for all HI1 within the town of Tewksbury, not just the two parcels that were just rezoned.
Thank you. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thomas Rabina, 940 Main Street. I don't know the applicant for this, but as a resident of the town, this fascinates me because I am in the automotive industry and have been my entire career. And I think this is actually a great move for the town, given that a cursory glance at where this rezoning would allow by the planning board's permission to put some new dealerships, they would very much align with the growth of used car dealerships in this country that are smaller and actually have a much more supportive impact in local communities than a large franchise store. A large franchise store will want to be on Route 38, and they already exist, and there's an empty site for them right now. But the smaller sites off of East Street that are HI1 that would accommodate a much smaller dealership, those stores employ 3 to 4 people and bring a good tax revenue to the town and a good supportive amount of business to these communities. There's a lot of dealerships that are set up a similar way in Florida, and they actually operate almost online only. So there's really not even a lot of traffic impact to the surrounding community because the transactions are being conducted online. That's where the industry is moving, and I think this is a smart idea, and I think that as a town we should adopt this to bring in more tax revenue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Kuko.
Yeah, Richard Cuco, 73 Emerald Court. Just a follow-up point on that. All HI1 zones are located within HI. There's no HI1 zone that is separated anywhere out on Main Street or any vicinity that has regular commercial use. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Plunkett?
Mr. Moderator, if you look at the current HI1 zones, you'll see, as we indicated previously, they fit into criteria that is off of the primary avenues within the town. There's the area that's off behind, the first area that was rezoned for the HI1 was that area off behind where the Bayberry is, that you go down and it's off isolated. And again, that's a situation that exists. So this makes sense, and we would request the support of the town meeting here tonight, and it will be for the benefit of the business community to have this added avenue of competitive strength to be able to deal with outlying communities.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on Article 37? Seeing none. Article 37 is a zoning bylaw. Do you wish to speak?
Hi, Marissa Brown, 142 Carter Street. I live right next to Jonathan Ricker, so this is my neighborhood, and the last one that was just passed in my neighborhood can now allow an auto dealership instead of just a change to the current small business that's there. And there's more children, and well, our neighborhood is the best neighborhood in this entire town. I'll definitely say that hands down. And it's a great community back there. I can't even imagine now having to drive into my street with a big Hyundai dealership on the left. Even though it's heavy, even though it's zoned heavy there, it just is right plunk in the middle of fantastic small residences and small communities. So please don't vote for this, because you just changed it and now it's going to get changed again, and minute by minute our little neighborhood is turning and morphing into something else very quickly. Thanks.
Mr. Plunkett.
Mr. Moderator, the allowed use of sales does not mean that there's going to be a Hyundai car dealership there. First of all, it would have to go through special permit before the planning board. And if you look at, I don't think there's any large car dealerships that are looking to locate off of some behind the isolated area. They want to be on the auto mile. They want to be in high visibility areas, and that's the usual criteria. So the fact to say that automotive sales would be allowed, that you're going to have a car dealership, I think is something that is casting a light on this that really isn't appropriate or realistic. That the use would be controlled by the planning board, and the isolated nature of the property itself would dictate what type of parties would be interested in going there.
Thank you. Mr. Sears.
Doug Sears, 80 Geiger Drive. Could we just move the question?
Certainly. We have a motion to move the question. All those in favor of moving the question, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying no. We'll move the question. On Article 37, this is a zoning bylaw change. It requires a 2/3 vote for passage. All those in favor of Article 37, please signify by rising. Counters, please count. All those opposed to Article 37, please signify by rising. Counters, please count. On Article 37, yes, 130, no, 26, required 104 to pass. Article 37 is adopted. Article 38, Mr. Wilson.
The Finance Committee defers to the Planning Board on Article 38.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Planning Board, at its public meeting, got an indication from the petitioner that they were going to withdraw this article, and as such, the Planning Board voted to accept the withdrawal without prejudice. In the event it is not withdrawn, the Planning Board recommend indefinite postponement.
Ma'am, are you the proponent?
I am.
Okay.
Diana Doherty, Bradford Road. Can you please withdraw this Article 38 without prejudice?
Thank you. We have a request to withdraw Article 38 without prejudice. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. Article 38 is withdrawn. Sorry. Article 39, Mr. Wilson.
The Finance Committee recommends adoption of Article 39.
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Planning Board voted unanimously for adoption of Article 39. Again, a citizen petition, so we'll defer to the citizen to discuss further.
Thank you. Mr. Plunkett.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. If I can get my voice back here. Article 39 is pertaining to the parcel of land at 1600 Main Street. This parcel is owned by the Rocha family. You know them because it's American Gutter right on Main Street. They've been in town, they've been in business for 25 years. They acquired the parcel right adjacent to their parcel on Main Street for the purpose of using it to help with their business operation. It was determined that this parcel of land was once connected to in the entryway, potential entryway to that back parcel, which is now, the multifamily site, and it was zoned MFD. So all we're looking to do is rezone this parcel, which is improperly zoned MFD, to go commercial, so that it's in line with their property next door, with all properties going along that Route 38 corridor. They have the Heatherwood on one side, they have the car wash on the other side, they have Mahoney's across the street. So it doesn't make sense that you'd have this 10,000 square foot parcel of land, MFD, in the middle of our Route 38 corridor. So we're looking to correct this. Again, looking to our business community, looking to members of our business community who have been here for 25 years with a sterling reputation, and I request and move that the town meeting adopt this article.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on Article 39? Seeing none. Article 39 is a zoning bylaw article. It requires a 2/3 vote to pass. I will take this vote in reverse. All those opposed to Article 39, please signify by rising. I see 0 voters rising. All those in favor of Article 39, please signify by rising. Article 39 is adopted unanimously. Article 40, Mr. Wilson.
The Finance Committee defers to the Planning Board.
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Planning Board voted to adopt Article 40, but an indication has been made that the petitioner wishes to withdraw this article, so I'll defer to the petitioner to discuss further.
Thank you. Mr. Plunkett.
Mr. Moderator, I'm requesting allowance to withdraw this article without prejudice.
Thank you. We have a motion to withdraw Article 40 without prejudice. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, signify by saying no. Article 40 is withdrawn. Before we leave this evening, I would like to thank the high school staff for their efforts in preparing the hall both nights. Thank you to the checkers and counters who got their Fitbit steps up tonight, certainly. and the town clerk and the rest of her staff for their work before and during the meeting. Thank you to all of you for continuing Tewksbury's 285-year tradition of coming together to discuss, debate, and decide on the issues that face us. Mr. Wilson, can I have a motion to adjourn the 2019 annual town meeting, sine die?
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. The 2019 annual town meeting is adjourned, sine die. Good night, everyone.